So, the football competition's street soccer, four-a-side, really fast, some excellent players, all homeless.
Homeless?
Yeah, all homeless. It's called the Homeless World Cup. There'll be players coming to Rome from all over the world.
Welcome to Radio Davos, the podcast from the World Economic Forum that looks at the biggest challenges and how we might solve them. This week, as the Women's Euros are underway here in Switzerland, we take a look at how football can change the world.
Our purpose is really to get people off the streets and end homelessness. That's what this is about. So we're using football and sport and the power of sport to change lives.
We talk to the man who invented the Homeless World Cup, a global event that speaks the universal language of sport.
As soon as they start playing football, you forget they're homeless. They become footballers, and they're footballers, and that changes their whole psychological view of themselves.
The Homeless World Cup, which this year happens in Oslo, Norway in August, has inspired a movie, The Beautiful Game, a feel-good film starring Bill Nighy.
Every player has a story to tell. Heartbreaking, unexpected, thrilling stories.
I got picked!
And they tell those stories in one great universal language. And it's football.
Follow Radio Davos wherever you get your podcasts or visit wef.ch/podcasts, where you'll also find our sister programmes Meet the Leader, interviews with some of the best thinkers in the world, and Agenda Dialogues, the full audio from World Economic Forum events. I'm Robin Pomeroy at the World Economic Forum, and with this look at the Homeless World Cup and the movie it inspired...
Come and watch the Homeless World Cup event because it's the way the United Nations should be. This is the way human beings should be, the spirit between them.
This is Radio Davos.
That's him. He's the one I told you about.
That had swagger. It really did.
I was a player. Vinny Walker, legend in the making.
Vinny was a pro. He's been living in his car for months. He's lost.
We're going to play an international football tournament in Rome.
There'll be players coming from all over the world. This lot are England's best homeless players.
Homeless?
I am not homeless.
That was a clip from The Beautiful Game, a movie based on the real-life event called the Homeless World Cup, a football tournament played by teams from around the world whose players are all homeless. In the film, Bill Nighy plays the England team coach who takes his team to the championship in Rome. It's a feel-good movie that leaves you with many questions, not least, is the Homeless World Cup a real thing? To answer that question, I'm joined by a man who co-founded the event 2 decades ago and who is still president of the Homeless World Cup, Mel Young. Hi, Mel. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine, and good to meet you.
It's great to meet you. What is the Homeless World Cup?
The Homeless World Cup is a very simple thing. We use football, our ball, and take it to where homeless people are in the world. We work in over 70 countries in the world, and homeless guys kick a ball around, which is very easy to do. You don't have to be any good at it. You can be good at it or not so good at it. It doesn't matter. And then once a year, a team is selected to represent the country, and it's hosted somewhere in the world. And we play football for 8 days, a short form of football. It's a fabulous event. People come to watch it. People love it. But our purpose is really to get people off the streets and end homelessness. That's what this is about. So we're using football and sport and the power of sport to change lives.
So in the film, for the people who've seen it, it's on Netflix. They all go to Rome and they're playing street football. I looked up street football. It's not officially a thing, is it? What is the type of football that these players play?
Yeah, we invented it quite deliberately to fit where the homeless guys were. So the game we've invented is four-a-side with eight on with rolling substitutes. Okay, and it's 7 minutes per half with a minute in between. So it's a short form of football. We invented this game quite simply for 2-3 reasons. One, we wanted the short game because we wanted to create pitches where homeless people were, so we could move them around to where they actually were, rather than saying, hey, we've got to go to 11-a-side pitch, which is 10 kilometers away or whatever. And secondly, a number of the homeless guys, particularly at the beginning, aren't so fit and maybe can't run around for 90 minutes in the full game. So we wanted to create something that was shorter, and we wanted to create something that was quite exciting. So our whole strategy here is around creating a sport or a form of football which is inclusive. So the way we do this is, you don't have to be any good at the game particularly, and some of our teams aren't so good, and some can be very good. So come to the event. We've got 48 in the men's competition and 32 in the women's competition. And what happens is that everybody finds their own level during the week. So if you lose, you don't go home. The not so good teams end up playing 48th, 47th place, 15th against 16th, and there are different cups, and at the end everybody gets a medal. But some of the games end up being really, really exciting. So the format we've created really works. So I've seen a team being 2 goals behind with 30 seconds to go, and then losing 3 goals in 30 seconds. So it becomes very exciting and compelling to the crowds. The crowds get into and get really excited. And so, as one of the media guys who came from Reuters at the very first event, he said to me, "See, as soon as they start playing football, you forget they're homeless." And I said, "Yeah, that's the whole thing you do. They become footballers, and they're footballers, and that changes their whole psychological view of themselves."
It's quite an event, isn't it? As it's portrayed in the film, these games are being played in Rome, around the back of the Castello Sant'Angelo. I looked up. I don't think you've played it in Rome, have you?
No, we've not played it in Rome. We've been all over the world, you know, and we deliberately want to be around the world so we can showcase what we're doing, and cities bid to host it in the same way they do for the Olympics and so on. But yeah, no, we've been in Rio and Mexico City and Santiago. We've been in Melbourne, Cape Town, Amsterdam, Glasgow, and this year in August we're in Oslo. Homelessness manifests itself differently around the world, but it manifests itself, and so we go to different countries and showcase our event and show, hey, this is solutions to tackling the problem. But the movie guys wanted to make it Roman. It's as you know, if you've watched it, it's a fictional movie, so it was fictional. But hey, that was a wonderful venue in the movie. So maybe we would like to be in Rome one day.
So it was Seoul last year and Oslo in August this year, 2025.
That's right, yeah.
Does it reflect, I mean, is that what it looks like? You saw small crowds, but excited supporters watching these games?
Yeah, it is. I mean, really, to be fair, it's a fictional movie, and we kind of signed the rights over to them so they could do what they wanted with it. But they've stuck pretty closely to it, actually. So both in terms of the characters and in terms of the event. We would probably get much bigger crowds. I mean, the biggest crowds we've had was 167,000 people came to watch. We were in Mexico City in 2012, which was incredible. So that's not all at once, but over the 8 days, which was incredible. And if you think about it, you know, that's people coming to watch homeless people play football. It's incredible. So maybe because of just the restrictions, maybe in the movie didn't show maybe what the crowds can be, but we've had some very, very big crowds. But overall, the movie was pretty representative of what we're about.
So what does it achieve, do you think? You're giving these people a week kind of out of their kind of daily life, which I imagine is quite a struggle for most of the people involved in this. That's great. But above and beyond that, what are you achieving?
I mean, yeah, exactly. We would always say, come along to the event because it's magic, and it is. And I would promise that to anyone, even people who don't like football, kind of like what we're doing. So there's something going on that's quite special. But if it was just that, we wouldn't do it, because our purpose is about kind of moving people on. And so to be clear, we just haven't taken people off the street the day before and then they're now playing in a football. They've been in our programs that our partners run around the world, and getting to the point where they're ready to kind of move on. So beginning to get into house, beginning to look at a job, finally come off drugs, or the last part of it. And this is the final push. And so as far as we're concerned, that's our raison d'etre is using it to end homelessness, and it works. I mean, all the research we've done is showing 80% of the people involved with aren't homeless anymore after the event, and so on. And that is a really, really important statistic for us, and what drives us on, what keeps us working hard, keeps us focused. And of course, we've got hundreds of stories of individuals who've we have the statistics. We've worked with 1.5 million people since we've started. But behind that, there's a story with everybody. But interestingly, a lot of them come back to the programs and volunteer as coaches, Some are even running the program, so former homeless guys. And they're very important because when homeless people are talking to them, they say, oh, you don't know what it's like, and where I am, it's terrible. And they kind of say, yeah, I do. I used to be you. And that is actually a really inspiring moment for those people to think, hey, well, I could do this. And so there's a kind of circular feel that's been created now since we started.
And I'm guessing, in addition to working with homeless people in those programs throughout the year, also there's an awareness raising thing. And that particularly comes through from the movie, because you're watching that. It's a feel-good movie. I guess it's a comedy in some ways, but there's some tough, you mentioned just now addiction. That comes up. It comes out almost out of the blue, really, the way that it's done in the movie.
Yeah.
Do you think getting people to understand what it's like to be in the shoes of someone in those, and in very different positions, because it also highlights in the film, it could be quite different for someone in London to someone in South Africa, someone in Tokyo, to be homeless, different stages of that, different ages, different reasons for being homeless. Is that kind of awareness a big issue for you?
Absolutely. That's one of the things. Obviously, our focus is on the homeless people themselves being not homeless. That's our key objective. A secondary one, though, is about changing the stereotypical view. So the stereotypical view is that here's some beggar in the street who's looking down with his hand out and who's homeless. Homeless manifests itself in all sorts of different ways, and it has different definitions in different countries. We at one point tried to have an international definition, which we sat for 3 whole days trying to work it out. We couldn't do it. And so the way we work it is we work with our players as per the definition of homelessness in their country. And so in England, for example, if you're in a homeless hostel, you're homeless. In some African countries, if you've got any shelter over your head, you're not homeless. But we respect the definition of homelessness per country, and that works. All of our partners kind of accept that that's what the way we work. It's not perfect, but we couldn't ever get a perfect scenario. But hey, it works. I think for us, this is a very important part. This changing of the stereotypical view. We've done research into it again about people who've come to watch, and they would say, a lot of them, they would never look at homeless people again in the same way. After coming to the event, if they saw somebody in the street, they would think, could be a footballer, could be part of this, could be the change. And that's very, very important. So the movie coming along, therefore, and it's been watched by millions of people in 187 countries. The feedback we get, people just like the movie, a bit like you're saying, it's a feel-good movie. People like it. People are saying, no, we enjoyed that movie, whether they like football or whether they're into social issues or whether they just like movies, they like the movie. And that's very, very important for us, because it is, you are beginning to get behind some of the issues that you're describing, getting to people to understand, oh, actually, that's a person who's become homeless that way, and here's another one maybe around drugs, and here's another one maybe around family issues or whatever it is. Getting that understanding is so important, I think, for people to understand and then have much more empathy with, because as soon as you start saying, oh, that could be me or could have been me, actually, then you become much more connected to the person. So the movie, although it's fiction, it's really good, I think, because it does kind of mix up that really tough, hard issues that are going on, obviously, around homelessness, but there's a lot of comedy in it as well. And that's our experience. I mean, some of the times I've been with homeless people over the years, I've had some of the best laughs going, and we have, it's just really good. And that's about life, and it reflects it. So even if we're working in these very difficult circumstances, we are able to laugh, and that's what we can build on relationships if we can laugh together. And the binding thing for us is that ball pulls us together. Our players can't even speak the same language. It was even happening in the movie behind the scenes. Interestingly, you maybe not want to aware, but a lot of the players there were former homeless players that they brought on, as to take part in the teams. And so the actors then behind, when they're in downtime, and there's obviously a bit of downtime when you're making a movie, they're all now talking to these guys, and they're all interacting, talking, kicking the ball on, but getting to know each other and so on. And so that's what happens. And there's lots of examples of where people might have been, I'm never going near a homeless person, or a homeless person's never going near a rich, powerful decision maker. and they never have a chance to speak to another, but put a ball down between them, and all of a sudden you have a communication.
So the movie, I guess, there's two main characters. There's Michael Ward's character, who is a young, good footballer who gets almost spotted just in the park by Bill Nye's character, who is the coach, and he's clearly trying to enlist him. And it's quite interesting as we see the things really through those two characters' eyes. And Michael Ward's character, he almost doesn't realize he's homeless. We don't learn that much about him, but he's estranged from his wife and child, and he's living in his car, but he doesn't actually classify himself as homeless. Maybe we can just hear a clip from that as he's meeting the other players on this team, and he's just kind of in denial about his own situation.
I think you're the best football player I've ever seen. Well, except on the telly.
Do you think that
You're a great striker.
we've got a great striker, namely me? Mal picked all of us. I don't qualify because this is the homeless World Cup, and I am not homeless.
Sorry. We just assumed.
Yeah, well, I've got a car, a job,
What job?
logistics. Good luck, yeah.
Embarrassing that. You thought he was homeless. He's just a bit of a twat.
So that's a clip from the movie. Where did it come from? You've been involved with this for what, 20 years?
Yeah,
Is that right?
since, yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, how did it come to you? You're a journalist before that, right?
Yeah.
Was your interest homelessness? Was it football? How did it all come together for you?
Well, I've been working with homeless people because we've done the street papers, and that's my journalist input. And then
To do with the big issue, is that
yeah,
right?
the big issue in Scotland, which I'm from Scotland, and it had been successful. And other street papers have been started up around the world, and then we were able to get together once a year. We created a network of street papers. We didn't have much money, but we were able to meet together. So we met together in Cape Town, 2001, and it was a great conference.
It's a conference of
the
people producing these papers.
Street papers, yes. So
Right.
we the founders or directors or editors. And what was good about it was we were able to kind of share experience, and sometimes it was difficult for lots of papers to be able to share, this is how we overcame X, Y, Z. So support one another, learn from one another, talk about how we might do things together. And so at the end of this conference, which was really inspiring, it was like we all felt that, yeah, this is really good. We'll do this once a year. This kind of gives us an adrenaline shot. Well, this is really good for us. But then after that, I was having a beer in Cape Town with another of the street paper editors, a guy called Harry Schmidt from Graz in Austria. And we were going to great conference, this really good, inspiring, positive, but there's no homeless people here. We're just all editors and so on. How could they experience what we were experiencing? So we were throwing ideas around, like could do a conference, and we didn't think that would work, and wouldn't necessarily get impact, and then exchange some sellers, and then there'd be issues about visas maybe, or employment status, or and then a language, blah, blah, blah. And we said, well, there is an international language called football. And we were both into football. Like, I love football, okay? And he also loved football, and he played semi-professionally and so on. I hadn't, because I'm not with it. But we both loved it. So we started mucking around over a beer, and I said, look, to some of the guys in our paper in Scotland, they kick a ball around. They could be Scotland. We'll make them Scotland. And he said, oh, we have the same. So we'll be Austria. So we shook hands and said, right, there's going to be this game then between Scotland and Austria. And I said, look, Scotland will win, because we never win at football, but we'll beat you guys, okay? This is just what's going to happen. And he's going, no, our neighbours are Germany, and they win everything, and we'll beat you guys. So we were mucking around like that.
Who won? Did you make?
Well, let me finish the story.
Okay.
So then we drank some more beer, to be honest. And then, we said, well, wasn't everybody come, not just us? And we invented the Homeless World Cup over that beer. But then the next morning, we met again over breakfast in the hotel where we were staying. And we said, oh, that was just a wonderful conversation. Will we leave it in the bar, or will we do it? So sometimes people talk about there's that moment, the creative moment. But I think probably the breakfast was the critical thing. We're like, because we said, nah, let's do this. So then we made it happen over the next 18 months, okay? And we had the first event in Graz in Austria. Everybody said we were mad, this wasn't going to work, etc., etc. But it worked. And one of the games, of course, because this is the way sport goes, okay? The draws Scotland against Austria, of course. And in one of the first games in a section. And so Scotland played Austria, and Scotland won. But the way the competition went, Scotland then didn't do so well and ended up in not so good position, but Austria managed to get to the final and won. So there's a picture of me and Harold shaking hands together because we both won a game and Austria won, and it was magic for that country of Austria at the time. It was just a beautiful event in Graz, and we were only going to do it once. But from that moment, because of the research we did into what was happening and what happened there, that was the beginning of when we started moving it around the world.
You mentioned this idea of a kind of universal language, and you can drop a ball between two people who otherwise wouldn't be able to communicate. I think the film brings that out as well. And I think it has a lot to say about masculinity. You've got these men, and on the England team, it's all men. We'll talk about women in a minute. These men, some of them find it difficult to communicate with each other. Not necessarily because they're homeless or because they've got addiction problems or whatever, probably just because they're men. I mean, that really, for me, really strongly comes through the film. Is that something that you've found over the years, that just men find it difficult to communicate, but sometimes, well, having a beer is one way, or throwing a ball at their feet is one way of just getting them to open up with each other, communicate?
I think probably yes. I mean, I think the issue for us, we work with homeless people, is that you end up very isolated on your own. You're concentrating on how I'm going to get to tomorrow, where am I going to eat, where am I going to sleep, etc., etc. So in a sense, you become quite self-centered and selfish. Not that I'm saying homeless people are selfish, it's just that's what happens. And then when you get to be part of a team, which is what we're trying to do, build people into a team, which is part of a family, you do start to open up a bit. And you have to speak to your fellow teammate about how the ball's going to be passed, or how you're going to be the goalie, or whatever it is. And that simple means of communication, being part of the team, is so powerful in the first part of what we're doing, that psychological change. And it is about communication. And I do think actually men do have an issue around this, actually, about talking about their feelings. I think that's universal. But I think it's kind of, the football and what we're going through get people open up. And what I find with homeless people, or people who've been in this situation, when they open up, then they really open up. So much more than any of us who are not homeless, by the way. You ask them what their issues are, and they'll tell you exactly what's going on, sometimes in detail. And then they're sharing that, and others start to open up as well. And that is part of a kind of healing process, because being homeless is very damaging, and to be able to kind of heal through the football and talking with teammates. One other aspect to this which is fascinating, there was all sorts of things, we came up with this idea, there were all sorts of things we didn't kind of know were going to happen, is that the way the teams kind of are with one another. So they can't speak the same language, but they really respect each other. And it's a contact sport, and they want to win the games. But afterwards, you lose a game for a minute or so, you're not happy about this. But actually then the teams come together, and it's almost like everybody around the world, they all know that they've been in this situation of being excluded from society, although it differs from country to country, and they're all part of the same family, and then they're really together. And that there is a kind of universal bond between them. I always say to people, come and watch the Homeless World Cup event, because it's the way the United Nations should be. This is the way human beings should be, the spirit between them. I remember one time, as an anecdotal story, just to illustrate this, we played in Cape Town in 2006. The Danish team were going down, and the coach was telling me the stories. He said the players had said to her, well, we're the poorest of the poor, there's nobody worse off than us. She was going, well, I think you'll see when you get South Africa and some other teams that you're not. And they said, no, this isn't possible. So in the very first day they were in South Africa, and there was a visitation out to some of the townships, and they quickly decided that actually they weren't the poorest people. And they started giving, people had given them little presents to take for their event. They started giving their stuff away to people, to the other team and so on. And then the South African players said, we didn't realize anybody who was white could be homeless. So immediately then, or if you look at that story, you've got a juxtaposition of people kind of thinking they were in the worst possible position, but understanding that other people were possibly in a different position, and it changes your whole perspective. Psychologically, all of a sudden you were in a different place, and that's what the Homeless World Cup does. It puts people in that different space. So it's rather a long way of answering your question, but actually that getting men to open up and understanding where they are happens through our event, and it's important.
And women then, in the film, the US team, I think, is all women. In the real life event, are women involved? Are they mixed teams? Are they separated? How does it work?
In the real event, we have men's and women's company. They're separate. It wasn't always such, and the women's games really developed.
I was going to say, in 20 years ago, in Europe, certainly, it was a man's game. And now, in 2025, you're about to see the Euros hosted in Switzerland here. It's a massive thing now. And of course, in the US, it was always maybe a more feminine game than it's seen as in other parts of the world. So the game of football has really evolved over 20 years, hasn't it?
The game of football has really developed over the recent years, yes. And that's really good. But within ours also. So the history of it is, in our event, to begin with, when we started, we were really focused on young men, because we had other ways of working with women, and which were working okay. But these particular young guys, they wouldn't move for anything. Like, we were trying desperately until we said, "Do you want to play football?" And they went, "Oh yeah, we'll do that." So our focus to begin with was on the young guys. And in our first event, I think there was 3 or 4 women. So we allowed women to participate. So, Brazil brought a couple of women because they were used to playing football in the street, and they were working with the women and so on. It was that way to begin with. And then we decided, hey, look, there's a bit of a demand here for women. So we'll have a women's event, which we had for the first time when we were in Melbourne in Australia, and it was really worked. So we've kept doing it. What's interesting, I think, is that the way the women come together more. So we were talking about the men molding together as a team. I think it's interesting the women mold together better as a team quicker. Okay, they support one another, and maybe that's a kind of cliche or something or whatever. I don't necessarily have any evidence, but what I see, so we want to build the women's events. But what we're finding is in the women's events is that in cultures where the women are used to playing football or play on the street regularly, so particularly Latin America, South America, and they're winning the events now. So I think Mexico have won it for the past 8 or 9 years because they're just really good at it. Whereas the European teams aren't so good at it because culturally in the past, they've not been used to playing so much on the street or whatever. They'll start to catch up, I think, over time. So we have a big focus now wanting to develop the women's game more, get more women involved. Again, our purpose really is taking the ball to wherever there's homelessness and getting a solution. So if it creates a solution for the women, then we'll focus on the women. So the current way it works is that you can bring a country can bring 2 teams to the event, men and women. So it has to be all men, all women. So, but if you can only bring 1 team, which some can only afford to bring 1 team, and you can put in the men's event, you can have a mixed team in the men's event. So it allows women to participate for the country if the country wants.
It's a big event. A lot of organisation must cost a lot. Where do you find the funding for it?
We try and keep our costs down to a minimum as far as possible. And we've got a lot of volunteers who work with us around the event, and we've got a lot of pro bono support. But the way it works is that the host country pays for the event, so they bid to host it. So it's a bit like the Olympics or some of the big sporting events. And so they will be responsible for paying for our annual event for like all the accommodation, all the food, the building of the stands, the marketing within country. That money will come from 3 sources generally: government, city government, or national sponsors. Sometimes that splits a third, a third, a third. Sometimes it's all of one. So when we were in Paris, for example, it was all government. When we were in Mexico, it was all national sponsors. In a sense, that doesn't matter to us as long as the costs are covered. So we'll sign a contract then centrally for the host city to do that, and then they fund the event in that way. Then our central funds, which we try and keep, central costs we try and keep a minimum, so we don't have to spend our entire time fundraising, come from various sponsors, from the rights fees we get and so on, so that we are actually the catalyst, if you like, sitting centrally that's making it happen. Where we want to go now, though, is post the movie, actually, because there's been so much interest in this. We want to really grow the organization simply because the more places we can get to, the more impact we can have. So we're looking for sponsors and investment right now to build the organization a bit. But we're around the same principles, really. The volunteers that we have, some of whom come every year from across the world to support us, are brilliant people. And we want to keep that base and keep that atmosphere around the event. But, you know, we probably need a bit more cash to help us do more.
I'd recommend people visit the website as well, because one of the things on there is it talks about the movie, which, as you keep mentioning, is a fictional movie. You think, well, who are these characters? And very nicely on there, they said these are composite characters in the people who've written and directed the film. And they'll show you the real people who have shared some of the stories. You've worked with these people over 20 years. Are there kind of types and archetypes of homeless people that come through in the film? You watch that and say, yeah, I've met a dozen of those, or those personalities, or the stories behind them.
The movie does really well and captures it, I think. You know, there's some things, of course, which aren't correct. So you'd never take the one player, Michael Ward, from the street straight into a team, I'm saying, for example. But, you know, the story's right, and it's fine because it captured him as a character admitting he was, you know, saying he wasn't homeless when he knew he was. And that's a really good story and central to it, and it's absolutely fine. The thousands of people that we've worked with, they're all different. They all have different stories. They all have the different situations that have emerged for them. And so there's no one kind of stereotypical view, to be quite honest. But, you know, if you go back, you have a look at the kind of causes, and this is where I will get into a whole discussion with governments and institutions about prevention strategies. Have a look at where people are coming from, and you'll find it's the same issues. So, you know, a lot of people ending up homeless who've been in the care system or been in young people's hostels and so on. A lot of people who are being released from the military end up being homeless. So if you have a look at those, you can start to say, well, this is how we can actually stop them coming onto the street in the first place, by creating prevention measures. The issues really are one about exclusion and people falling off the edge and there being no safety net. And as a result, they just end up in a very, very difficult situation, but are able to get themselves out if you provide the right tools. The right tools. I mean, you must talk to policymakers as well in your work. Are there things that you say to them? You know, here, these are the policies we would need. I imagine there must be lots of different policies which are needed, and it may vary on the location and the particular need you're looking at. But is there kind of one clear thing that policymakers are always missing? I think that there are. I think governments that you speak to, policymakers, they kind of get the issue. Whether it's a priority to them or not varies. Some countries are actually total denial and say there isn't a problem when there is. My view at the moment, and developed over time, is what we've got here is a system failure globally that's creating this. And so I'd be saying to any policy member at the moment, fix the system. And so we do what we can do, okay, as Homeless World Cup, and we've worked with thousands of people, and people give us awards and make movies about us, which is lovely. Please give us more awards, blah, blah, blah. It's just great. But the challenge that we have is that as soon as we move one person, another person comes to take their place. It's never ending. And so what we actually want to do is end homelessness altogether. So I don't think there should be any in the world. How we created a world, and where even in the richest countries in the world, you've got people lying around in the street. How have we created that system? So that would be my first port of call, first point to any policymaker. Right? How can we end this? I will then explain to them, and there's plenty of studies that shows how expensive homelessness is to society, to governments, to everybody else, how expensive this is, quite apart from the damage it does to the individual. And so how can we begin to change? Now, let's have a look at the policy. So I say, first of all, like, homeless prevention should be a key thing that governments can get involved in doing. So they are responsible for release from the military, release from prisons, release from care institutions, etc., etc. They can be impactful in that area. I think at the moment what we need are not the usual suspects coming to the table. So people from the private sector, from the insurance sector, from the housing sector, from the finance sector, to, hey, can we get your brains around this and start to think about some of these what are intractable issues here and try and create solutions. Obviously, it's around housing is one core part of it, obviously, but a lot of people say it's the only thing. To me, I always say there's a difference between houselessness and homelessness. Homeless is different from houseless, but that you have to sort some of the houses. That's part of a kind of policy. But how do people live in the houses, and what does home mean, etc. I would be looking in these areas urgently. If I look at the west coast of the US at the moment, which in some ways epitomizes what's going on, huge numbers of homeless people. Local people there see it as a major issue, like what's going on here. The authorities are, to be fair, spending a lot of money trying to sort the problem, but they're not sorting the problem. So it's not just about putting money into this, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be spending money, by the way. It's actually about having a look at what the system is that's causing this in the first place. And of course, it's all that is connected. It's not about the homeless silo. It's everywhere. So we need to be getting out of these silos, trying to have a look at the systems, and fixing that system. And then also at the same time trying to be innovative. So I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm a social innovator. We bought sport. Nobody thought sport could have anything to do with solving homelessness or helping homeless people. I brought that in as a kind of left field. But there'll be others. But we need to change our thinking away from how do we manage the homeless problem, or how do we help the homeless, as sometimes it's called, into how do you end homelessness. It's a completely different mindset. So we want to put ourselves out of business. That's what we want to do. We shouldn't exist.
But is it possible? Because you yourself said you move someone out of homelessness, someone just takes their place. It's kind of this, I think you said a kind of endless problem. If you have a mindset change among policymakers and everyone, is it actually, in your view, realistically, could you solve this problem?
So a lot of people call me naive, okay? So I'm very happy to be described as naive, but I think it's absolutely possible. If we want to do this, if we have the collective will that we want to end homelessness, we can do this. As I say, it's a system problem, so fix the system. I mean, young people get brought up and there are homeless people in the street, so that's normal. A bit like the buses are coming along. The buses come along, don't they? So there's homeless people in the street. We won't need to be saying to everybody they shouldn't be there in the first place. This is not normal, but it's become normal, and that's the thing we need to challenge. So when you say correctly, which people say to me, "Hey, I mean, this is just you're never going to sort this," I don't believe that. I think we can sort it if we want to. We are, as human beings, we are a genius. We send people to the moon even quite a long time ago. We create the internet where we are now communicating around the world instantly. All of us, by the way, on phones and so on. It's amazing. We put resources behind it. We did it. We could solve homelessness if we want to.
I'll ask you one last question. What's the one thing you wish people understood about homelessness?
I think that the one thing I like people to understand about homelessness is it manifests itself in different ways. It's not just about that stereotypical view which the media have of somebody sitting in the street begging. It manifests itself in a different way. And the one thing I would say to anybody, by the way, it can happen to you. You think you're in a safe position, and I genuinely hope you are, and being sensible. But I have seen people who've been extremely well off, something's happened in their business or something's happened in their family, and very quickly they've ended up on the street. And so be aware of that. I hope it doesn't happen, but be aware it could. And understand that the people out there are just human beings, ordinary human beings, that life has taken a bad turn with. Things have happened in their life. They didn't deliberately go there. Things have happened. Be generous towards them, and understand that things like kicking a ball around can actually make a difference. And, you know, sometimes I kind of say, look, if you read the number of people who are homeless from the United Nations, it's hundreds of thousands or hundreds out of billions. But our brains cannot cope with how we are going to solve that problem. But you can do small things. So speak to somebody homeless in the street. If you happen to see them, that's just enough. Just doing something, you know, encouraging to do things like kicking a ball around. That's what I would be saying to people, like engage with this and become knowledgeable. So you think you can't do anything, but learn about where the hostels are or soup kitchens or support mechanisms. They'll be around in some neighborhoods, and you could speak to them, say, why don't you go and do this? Or, hey, look, there's a football program down the road. Why are you enjoying that? Get to know and understand. And if we all own the problem, then we'll have solutions and stop looking at everybody else to solve them. It's up to us to do this. And what we're finding through Homeless World Cup is that people that understand the ball and the football and are engaging with us and volunteering and helping and enjoying it and having a good time and having a laugh and watching their team lose or win or whatever, and being part of something that is making a huge difference.
So the next one's in Oslo in August. We'll look out for that.
Yeah, come along. I say to people, if you get a chance, I'm not just kind of trying to sell it, although I probably am. Come along if you can, because you'll love it. It's between the 21st and the 30th of August in the centre of Oslo. Watch magic happen.
Who's your tip? Who should I put my money on?
Oh, well, currently, it's somebody from the Latin and South America. So Mexico won the men's and women's last time. It's hard to bet against them, or Chile's or Brazil's or whatever. But hey, all the teams are up for it. But and it's always great fun. And it's interesting because obviously the teams want to win the main trophy, but others win trophies at lower level or whatever. And sometimes the crowds get behind those teams, the teams that aren't so good. So I remember one of the years the Japan team came, a team from Japan, and they were just not very good at all, a bit like the movie actually. And the crowd were just right behind Japan. They were supporting Japan despite the fact they were losing all the games, and and so on. So you can support everybody. But in terms of the winners, I think I'd be surprised if Mexicans or Brazilians don't win it again. But hey, it's football, it's sport. It's the year of the underdog I've seen around the world. So let's see.
The movie's called The Beautiful Game. The event in real life is called the Homeless World Cup. Mel Young, thanks for joining us on Radio Davos.
Thanks very much.
You can find out more about the Homeless World Cup at homelessworldcup.org, and the movie The Beautiful Game is streaming on Netflix. Please follow Radio Davos wherever you're listening to this, wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you get a moment, leave us a rating or a review. This episode of Radio Davos was written, presented and edited by me, Robin Pomeroy. Studio production was by Taz Kelleher. We'll be back next week, but for now, thanks to you for listening, and goodbye.